Hello, welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews, and this is my review for Star Trek Lower Decks Season 3, Episode 6, Hear All, Trust Nothing. That, of course, refers to one of the rules of acquisition. I don't know which one, but I heard that it is one of the rules of acquisition. And ironically, this episode also references the episode called Rules of Acquisition from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. But that's as far as I'm going to spoil you before I give the standard spoiler warning. If you have not seen up through the end of this episode, you will not want to watch this video or things will be spoiled for you. So let me dive in. This is absolutely my favorite episode of the season. It has two big things that I have been clamoring for. One thing that I've been calling for since the beginning of this season, and another thing that I've been clamoring for since the start of the entire show, and really in all of modern Trek. Now, the thing I've been clamoring for since the beginning of the season is Jennifer the Andorian. We need to actually see her, not just a fake version of her we saw in the previous episode. We need to actually see that relationship to follow up to the end of season 2. And then, of course, the thing I've been calling for since the start of the show is Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine is the least referenced of the three 90s show. Remember, Enterprise is a 2000 show. Of the three 90s show, for the only one where we hadn't had an actual appearance from a character from that show. We had Tom Paris last year and Riker the year before. And we've had Quark's bars in the background. We had Cisco's restaurant earlier this season. And we learned in season 1 that Mariner used to be stationed on Deep Space Nine. And we got a quick flashback scene of her on Deep Space Nine. But that's it. I wanted more Deep Space Nine. I feel like Deep Space Nine is the least referenced show in modern Trek. It gets name dropped every once in a while. We got a Cisco reference in that awful Picard season 2 alternate timeline episode. So we get him here and there, but I feel like this is what my heart has been crying out for. Like, just fully immersed back into Deep Space Nine with a Quark and Kira appearance, and those are the two characters that make the most sense that would appear. We get a third cameo. I don't know if everyone caught the third cameo. I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But this episode was more than just going all about the nostalgia and just going, oh, look at this. Oh, it's Deep Space Nine. It did do that, and I loved that. But it told a nice little story as well, especially a nice little character story for Tendi, which I'll get into. So let me go ahead and dive into the details now. We start off with this cold open, and I felt like a complete idiot because last week I said, oh, we finally got the scene where they go to the Starfleet career fair or whatever. I think that's the last thing from the trailer we haven't seen. I can't believe I forgot my favorite part of that entire trailer, which was what turned out to be the cold open here, where Captain Freeman asked them to stall, and Ransom tells the helms person to just keep looping around, and they go, I love that so much. And again, I love that the trailer wasn't ruining too much. It was a funny scene, but it was just the cold open. It wasn't like the funniest scene of the episode or anything like that. Alright, but before we get into the Deep Space Nine of it all, I actually want to start with the Jennifer the Andorian and Mariner storyline, and then I'll dive into Deep Space Nine. There's actually 4 different storylines in this episode, although the Boimler one is not much of anything. So yes, I've been calling for this, I've been waiting for this. I still think we need a little bit more than this. I still think we need some follow-up on episode 3, and how Mariner was, her greatest desire was for Jennifer to be all sexy and stuff, implying she's not getting exactly what she wants out of the relationship. But this was really nice to get something finally. And Mariner is going off to meet Jennifer's friends, which of course she's really hesitant to do and doesn't want to do at first. And I loved how they were talking about how bossy she was. She's like, I'm not bossy. And the other 3 of them just crack up laughing. And this is, of course, becomes something that Mariner is self-conscious about. Now, there's a lot of funny moments within this. I love when the two girls are like, well, she's pouring her drink, and the two girls are like, tell me about Boimler. He's so sexy. And Mariner's like, I'm gonna need a little more of this stuff. Was that Romulan ales? No, Romulan ales blue. This was green stuff. Maybe it was like green stuff that Data had in that episode that Scotty was in. It is green. I don't know. Anyways, so that was fun, and I really enjoyed the resolution of this storyline where Jennifer's like, "No, you're kidding me. I love it when you're bossy," and Mariner immediately goes, "All right, everybody, shut the f up!" And like it's beeped out, but she's like, "Shut the fuck up!" and he's raising the phaser. And she just stuns all of Jennifer's friends. And Jennifer is sitting there clapping. It's a little masochistic of Jennifer. but I like that this sticks with the theme, which I'll talk about with Tindy as well, of just being yourself. Like, just being who you are. And not trying to hold back, not trying to pretend to be someone else is always the best way to go. And that's a theme that comes up elsewhere in this episode, which is a theme that I really appreciate. And I appreciate the subtlety in which they delivered the theme throughout different storylines in this episode. Now let's dive into the Deep Space Nine of it all. Okay, so we arrive on Deep Space Nine. We get to see Kira is in charge, of course, and we knew that at the end of Deep Space Nine. And I like the fact that she was holding Sisko's baseball, and she's like, well, Starfleet Command, they like to throw you a curveball. I also liked that Kira and Shax knew each other. I mean, all Bajorans don't know each other, but I do like that they made this connection between the two characters. And I loved the running gag where they were just like, no, I owe you one. No, I owe you one. And they were actually getting angry about it, because I kind of feel like that was similar to what Kira did whenever she would reunite with one of her old buddies from the Resistance. This, of course, was greatly exaggerated because it's Lower Decks, but this is what I love Lower Decks for. The way that they turn everything into hyperbole and kind of slightly exaggerate things to make it really funny, and I really enjoyed that gag here. And then, of course, at the end of the episode, everything's good between the two of them. Also, of course, we get a cameo not only from Nana Visitor, which was amazing, but also Armin Shimmerman as Quark. I mean, you had to have Quark in this episode. I consider Nana Visitor sort of a bonus. When I heard it was the Deep Space Nine episode, it was like, they've had all these Quark's restaurants. They gotta have Quark in this, but we get both of them. But the third cameo, did you catch it? When they go into Quark's, who is sitting at the bar but Morn? Morn is right there. I absolutely love seeing Morn. It's so awesome. How could you have Quark's without Morn? I wonder if they if Quark hires a person from his species to sit at each bar in the franchise. That's really fun. Also, a Jake Sisko reference was made later when Rutherford is up on the top of the promenade, and he's like, oh, but I wanted to talk to a junior reporter. I think that was just a fun reference to Jake being a junior reporter in previous episodes. I don't think it was Jake himself. Jake would be a little older now at this point. Trying to think of where exactly we're on the timeline, but Jake should at least be in his 20s at this point. He wouldn't really be a junior reporter at this point anymore. So it's just kind of a fun callback to the previous episodes where Jake would run around and be the junior reporter. So lots of great callbacks in this episode. But let me get into the heart of the storylines. So the Boimler thing was just him playing Dabo, so I'll start with that really quickly. I liked that at the end of it, he has piles of gold pressed latinum, and he's like, actually, we don't even use money in Starfleet. I know, why did I ever mention that in Deep Space Nine? Ever. So I love how the Frankie bartender is so pissed off. He's like, what? You don't use money in Starfleet? And because that's the first time he's heard of that, because no other Starfleet officer ever talked about that on Deep Space Nine. So I actually really appreciated that. So I'll go to the next storyline before I get into the heart of the show, which is the Tindy storyline. The next storyline with Captain Freeman negotiating with the Cameron. The Cameron appeared in the episode Rules of Acquisition back in season 2 of Deep Space Nine, which was the very first reference to the Dominion. They were, in fact, Quark's in to the Dominions. I forget those dudes. Those, I call them the professional wrestling dudes. I forget what that species was called. They're the ones who told Quark about the Cameron, that they had a connection to the Dominion, which of course now they're trying to downplay and be like, no, we had nothing to do with the Dominion. That was Jim Hadar and the Vorta. We didn't do anything. And Quark is acting like he has a moral outrage, and I think he's like, I have morals, and Kira's like, no, you don't. So you know there's something else going on. It turns out that he had stolen Cameron technology for his Quark 2000. Now, why is it called the Quark 2000? That is something that we used to do for you younger folks. We used to do back in the 20th century. We would name futuristic products the something 2000 because we thought the year 2000 was some futuristic thing. So it's kind of weird that he named it the Quark 2000. But it turns out he stole some of their technology and he didn't want them to find out about that. Classic Quark. This is great to see Quark is still Quark, even in Lower Decks. I loved that aspect of the storyline. Absolutely. Now let me get into what I see as the heart of the show. We get into the Tindy stuff, and we've had this before where Tindy is kind of ashamed of her past and doesn't like being stereotyped and gets very angry about being stereotyped as a pirate. So how is she going to react when she meets an Orion who loves to live up the stereotype and oh yeah, we're pirates, don't you love being pirates? That is Tindy's worst nightmare. And I love how Rutherford was clueless to this and he was just totally hammering it up and totally egging him on, yeah, that's great. And when he offers to take him for a tour and Tindy's like, no thanks, and Rutherford's like, yeah, definitely. And then Rutherford is so clueless. It was typical of his character. But in the end, she finally, just loses it and yells at him I don't like being a pirate! Would you stop with this stereotype? And a couple of nice things happen here toward the end of the episode. First of all, we get the reveal that this dude is a total phony. He knows everything he does about Orion's from a holo novel. I love that because a lot of people modern day know everything they know about certain stereotypes, certain people, just by watching movies and just live into that stereotype. And the same thing with this guy. And the lesson for him is, you should just be yourself and not have to fit into what you want other people or you think other people expect you to be, which is an important lesson. But more importantly here is what we come away with Tindy, who is one of our main characters, who, as I said in previous seasons, has been ashamed of her past. And in the end, she does the big heroic pirate swashbuckling thing and saves everybody, which was badass. It was great to see a badass version of Tindy. And I love how Rutherford and that other dude, I think Mask was his name, were just in awe. She just used a wine opener for that. Just in awe of how badass she was. And she says, her parents would be proud of her. I think we need to see Tindy's parents at some point. And I think we saw a relative last season. Wasn't it an uncle or something? I forget. But anyways, she comes to the conclusion that, you know what? I should embrace my past. That's a part of who I am. That really resonates with me because me as a trans person struggling with how I relate to my past self before I transitioned my male self, and learning to embrace that that is a part of who I am. That doesn't mean that I still am that or that I have to be that now. It just means not denying that that's part of who I am. Because if you're you can't deny part of yourself. So that's what was so beautiful to me about Tindy's story, is that moving forward, she's like not gonna deny her past, and embrace that that's a part of who she is. She doesn't have to live into the pirate stereotypes. She doesn't have to be a pirate all the time. She can still be herself. So she's learning to be herself, just as Mask does in his own way. So I thought this was an absolutely beautiful story for Tendi. Great character development for this character. And that's really what pushes this episode over the edge for me as being the best of the season, other than the wonderful Deep Space Nine nostalgia and seeing Jennifer the Andorian with Mariner. That's what really did it for me. So, love this episode. Alright, let me wrap up this review with my rating out of 10. 1's the lowest possible score, 10's the highest possible score. My rating for Season 3, Episode 6 of Star Trek Lower Decks is a 9. Definitely my favorite episode of the season. Hesitant to quite give it a 10, because 10, Crisis Point got a 10. Very few episodes got a 10. I think Excretus got a 10. But this was the best episode of the season. Not only great Deep Space Nine nostalgia, but great character development for not only Tendi, but Mariner as well. So love, 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 love this episode. A 9 out of 10. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Please join me next week, where I think we finally are past the trailer. I don't know. There'll probably be something else that pops up. I should just go back and watch that trailer again. Anyways, join me next week as I review Season 3, Episode 7. Please subscribe. Hit the like button and all that stuff, and I will see you really soon. Goodbye.